It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays. And yes, as I said, continuation of the discussion on Monday, because this is a complicated topic, and I want to come at this a few ways so that something may click with one person that doesn't click with another person. And so the approach I'm taking on this time around is you are allowed to feel your feelings. You're allowed to have emotions. You're a human being. Human beings have feelings. And that is not, of course, what a lot of people are taught. And I want to be clear. This is not an indication that you have done something wrong. This is you responding to a series of expectations in your life. And that's a very important distinction, right? You're doing this stuff for a reason. And I'm just going to try to find, because I had to go through this. I had to dope this out on my own. It wasn't friggin' fun. So I want to break it down a bit more. So if you like this content, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/Leanna K. We do a lot of this sort of work in Leanna Care sessions. And like I said, on Monday, I've had an influx of pretty intense cases, people who can really use the extra sessions right now. And then other clients who have limited financial means but could use, more regular sessions than they're getting. The money element of this is a real thing, but together we're making it work. So thank you for that. And this is a tough one. And people have really bad reactions to the feelings thing. Because too often, families of origin or peer groups or workplace environments treat feelings as weakness. And they're not. They're data. And that's why it's really important to feel your feelings and understand what you're feeling, right? It's not just, I'm checking my notes. It's not just a question of having feelings. It's really understanding what's going on, right? Now and this is where we get into the concept of dissociation. And a lot of people understand dissociation as like Moon Knight, right? Or Bruce Banner, dissociative identity disorder. But and this is the thing that's tricky about psychology and the unfortunate pathologizing of completely healthy human experience. Every dissociation is not dissociative identity disorder, right? Every repression, temporary repression, is not maladaptive. Sometimes we have to do it, right? Sometimes we have to do tough love, and it can be really hard. But sometimes you have to put the feelings away for a bit so you can function. And it's very important that, you understand that process instead of demonizing it, so you can unpack it later and you can use those tools, ideally, instead of maladaptively, right? I mean, I had to dissociate a lot when I worked in television because I'd have a crew member basically treat me and other women on the set like dumb sluts while we were wearing very little. And then we'd have to go on and perform and smile and act like that didn't happen. And it was exhausting. It's not something you can do long term. And ideally, you get through it at the time, but then you talk about it with somebody, and a supervisor, a manager is, supportive enough to mean you don't have to just carry that around with you. First of all, it shouldn't happen over and over and over again. But also just, okay, that happens, and then I deal with it. Not it happens and it happens and it happens and it happens and I just have to keep sucking it up and never dealing with it. That's why so many actors develop drug problems and health issues and, weird woo-woo ideas about the world. Now, I worked in TV pre-Me Too, so it wasn't a supportive environment. And, I think that's why I got along with, women who worked in adult film, because they were really, really good at keeping their chin up. And, they understood that part of why they made money was nobody was supposed to see what they did as work. They were supposed to see what they did as fantasy. And part of the job, part of any entertainment job, is you make money by letting people not think about the process at the time. And I'm always amazed when I'm not sort of studying the process of an actor on something. There was one part in Moon Knight where it's a scene in, I think, Antwerp, and Mark/Steven is, it's that whole thing where he's like reaching up for things that aren't there and everything like that. And I was so bought in. It was like 4 cutaways before I realized, holy shit, he's not actually responding to things. He's just doing that, right? Oscar Isaac's freaking brilliant. I was, I forgot for a moment. Similarly, if you see the behind the scenes stuff that Tatiana Maslany does, and she's got this like ring and this like picture of She-Hulk's face like 2 feet above her head for eye lines. It's like she performed in that. That's amazing. And most people won't see the work, and that's the whole point. But that is a form of intellectualization, right? That is a way of soothing the isolation, soothing the separation from regular people that comes with acting, right? Because most people don't know what was going on that day. Most people don't know what went into a given thing. And that's part of the reason that industry is so protective of some of these actors that get attacked for, they didn't cast themselves in a part. I have no idea why, I say this all the time, but I have no idea why people attack the actor. It doesn't make any sense, but they do. And I've been there. I've been that person who's been attacked. And let me tell you, as soon as that's been you really empathize. You really put yourself in the position of somebody else that's been in that, in that spot. I remember feeling so bad for Hayden Christensen during the Star Wars prequels, because he sort of, it all landed on him, right? Because Ewan McGregor and Natalie Portman and so on and so forth had been in other things. And, all the actors were directed to camp it up. And they were doing what they were told. And then it comes out, oh, he can't act. And, happened to Jason Momoa on Game of Thrones too. And he was so good in that part. But actors sort of know. And so there's this, even if you can't stand a particular person's deal, there's sort of a camaraderie there, just because there's like this barrier between you and people. And it's sort of the same with YouTube creators. Some people don't understand why I not so much defend, but acknowledge the humanity of people who I don't agree with their takes on things, but as long as I don't feel like they're being sort of cynically malicious, I don't have to agree with them. It's like, that's a human being. This is over the line. Cut it out. Right? And I really do think, I really would love to see more people setting that example. Because what you see in a lot of YouTube creators is, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. My haters are my motivators. I don't care. Nonsense. Nonsense. Human beings are social creatures. It sucks to have people graft their shit onto you or not get what you do, or like put a lot of motivations in your head, a lot of weird, nefarious shit that isn't there. I have to just, ignore's the wrong word, but I have to let pass so many comments in a week that just jump to conclusions about motivation and emphasis on something like that. And I know I could deconstruct why it's wrong, but that's intellectualizing. I'm not going to fight with people who are intent on misrepresenting what I'm doing, because that's their journey and that's their struggle. And hey, if they felt good to yell at me for that, okay, I did them a service. You feel better for 5 minutes. It doesn't help you in the long run. And that's what I struggle with, is that rejection, that inability to connect to things as they are, because there's such a well of unprocessed bad. I worry about some of these people who leave nasty grams all the time. And it's not my job to save them, but that doesn't mean I can't give a shit as a human. It's not fair that someone comes to the table that it's not even bottled up. I was going to say broken, but bottled up's better. Bottled up is more accurate. It's contents under pressure, because, intellectually, we all know that nobody should be getting this upset about a piece of fictional media, but we've all done it from time to time, right? Something has just hit us the wrong way. I remember how physically ill I was playing The Last of Us 2. And that made me legitimately angry. Just the way that it felt like the game was abusing me. And I took a lot of shit for that point of view. But it's like when a game makes you murder dogs and is sort of forcing you to Stockholm syndrome a character who kills one of the beloved playable characters from the first game. It's not going to work for everybody. Some people are going to reject it. That's the high wire act that happens when you make that creative decision. And the way it was just so forced, and then the fucking cross in the synagogue happened. And that was just the tangible detail I could intellectualize, right? That's where the intellectualization happens. Like, okay, this feeling that, a video game is manipulating my emotions in a very ham-handed way. That's sort of on me. I chose to keep playing. But fucking iris cross in a synagogue is just a mistake. And so I just kept pushing that button because that was something I could fucking defend. Right? Like that there's no subjectivity there. That's just wrong. It's just, and you know what? It's ignorant. It's ignorant to put the wrong religious symbols in a building that allegedly was immediately recognizable to Dina as a synagogue. No, it wasn't. It was modeled after a deconsecrated church that was a banquet facility in, I forget the area, Seattle. I think it was Seattle. Yeah. And that, I'm like, no. There's now I have facts. Right. And after a while, I got kind of amused at driving The Last of Us 2 stands crazy. You may notice I do that. It's a teachable moment. That's why I call it my trickster god phase, my trickster god mode. Because, no, I'm going to drive you crazy. I'm going to irritate the shit out of you. Because 10% of you might learn something from this experience and think twice before you do it again. And I'm so calloused that I do not care. And there's a big difference between people who are pretending to not care and people who are legitimately don't care. And I take stock a lot because I remember when this stuff did used to bother me. I mean, okay, I started in TV when I started as an entertainer when I was 12, but I started working full-time in television when I was 19. So I was pretty young. So things bothering me then, kind of understandable. But I do check in with myself a lot to make sure that this is healthy boundaries and, how do I put this? A healthy detachment from the emotionality of some possibly unhinged people instead of going numb. Because going numb's bad. Going numb is a form of dissociation. And intellectualizing feelings is a form of numbing. And again, as I said on Monday, there is a difference between intellectualizing to process and intellectualizing to avoid feeling your feelings. And I know I've given examples after example. It's time for me to show you the difference and how to know which is which and how to do it healthy instead of do it unhealthy, right? Intellectualizing to process means you are acknowledging you have a feeling. So if you are attempting, this is just facts, this is just science, this is just logic. No, you're intellectualizing. There's some emotional trigger in this that you're avoiding, intentionally or not. Well, sometimes it is just science, like the cross in the synagogue, right? This is why I brought it up. Anything involving human identity, anything involving the self is not completely scientific. There is an emotional component to it. And one of the things I learned doing Myers-Briggs work is that I'm sort of a cold fish. When I started doing stuff, I was at INTJ. Now I lean. It's funny because the N was soft. The NS was soft when I first started taking these tests. And then as it went along, the N started becoming firmer. But the T started switching to an F. And to me, I think that's growth. I'm balancing out more. And so my goal for life is to eventually be fluid on every single letter. I've got 2 now. The J is stubborn. The I may never change. It may never. That's the tough one. I'm not sure I'm ever going to manage extroversion. But the one person I know says it is possible, that can move. So, okay, I'm taking his word for it. But that is because I started looking at that personality profile, taking what it said about being more aware, giving conversations more room to breathe, give people more emotional runway, give feelings more weight. And you know what? It was good advice. It worked. It made me a better manager. It made me a better listener. It made me a better communicator, because in terms of listening, you know, when somebody starts getting emotional, it's not, oh, that's just weakness or that's anti-intellectual. It's like, no, this stuff's valid. This stuff's a massive part of the way most people communicate. I'm not most people. It's very important to recognize when you have a rarer type this way, so you can do the conversions while not invalidating your own process. And that's what I like about the Myers-Briggs stuff that I like less about. I'm not a big fan of Enneagrams. Big 5 is everywhere, but there are positive and negative valuations to Enneagrams and Big 5 that Myers-Briggs doesn't have. The personality types. I mean, now they've added assertive and turbulent. And it's like, the names are bad. The concept is valid. That's adding the neurosism element back in, and it's real, right? It's valid, but I don't think that someone going through a bad time and not being quite on an even keel in a given moment is an indicator of personality. I believe that's an indicator of environment. But this just shows how much I intellectualize this stuff. And again, because of my personality type, this isn't me avoiding emotions. This is me processing emotions. This isn't me going, it's just science. This is me going, how can I use words? How can I use intellect to connect to other people, to perspective take, to see other valid viewpoints on this, and how do I separate the good from the bad, right? That's not avoiding feelings, that's embracing feelings. Because a big part of it is, and this is something that it was hard to learn, but I'm glad I did. When something hits me and stings, it's very important to give that value and not downplay it. That's the big difference between intellectualizing to avoid feeling something and intellectualizing to process. Because if you're using intellect to avoid your emotions, you start making a ton of false assumptions, and you get into fallacious thinking, and you miss complexities, you miss nuance, right? And the minute someone tries to point out to you that you're missing nuance, we get stuff like groomer, pedo, right? It's a new Duck, Duck, Goose, groomer, pedo. That shit is nonsense. And that is people unwilling to admit that there's this group of people that, you know, there has been much more visibility for transgender people of late. And that's a good thing. But for some people, it's just come out of nowhere, and it's scary, and it's too sudden, and things are moving too quickly. And, somebody might have gotten a bad reaction, or not been great at expressing. Like, look, some people feel far too vulnerable to say, look, I don't understand this. So they find a way to refute it. I see that a lot. I see that a lot in the comment section on YouTube. And it was just, last week was glorious with the the hardcore thing. People like, in the military it's this, and then people actually in the military were like, yeah, no, you're right. She's right. And I knew I was going to get some of that, because the people who fall prey to the negging that the hardcore attitude does, that is science. It's important to recognize that people become more compliant when they've experienced a drop in self-esteem. That's why pickup artists insult attractive women. But that's another one where it's important to go, okay, somebody said something that made you feel bad. Don't make any decisions right now. Go internal, process, don't react. You'll make a better decision. Go into analyst mode there. Don't say anything you can't take back. Don't get reactive. Don't start holding on to data like it's a life raft, because it's not about the data. It's how you're feeling, right? And this is part of the reason I love to dunk on TERFs. Oh, sorry, gender critical's TERF is a slur. See, I think I can, and this is just me. See, that was an emotional reaction. Blah. Because I get that, yes, they find the term offensive. But all the term means is trans-exclusionary radical feminist. And as somebody who's a semi-reform radical feminist, not the feminist part, the radical part, I think I'm allowed to use that word because I see the bullshit. I used to believe some of this bullshit. And you know what? It's bullshit. So if you don't like the word, don't get so hung up on words, And that could be wrong. And I'm aware that I might be being an asshole there. So I'm leaving a certain amount of uncertainty there. I've started trying to use gender critical more. I'm not convinced, but I'm trying it. See, that's one indicator that you're using intellect to process instead of intellect to avoid, when you can be flexible. It's really important that you're maintaining intellectual flexibility, that you can let other thoughts in. That means you're solid, you're balanced, you're stable, you're not flailing or grasping or fawning without realizing it. And, that's why I delight in when I get the adult human female, okay, define adult. Because they're going for the female bit, right? But no, there's 3 parts to that definition. I'm going to pick a different one. Because you may have seen on Twitter, I linked an article where was it Missouri? A judge in Missouri wouldn't let a 19-year-old woman attend her father's execution. She wanted to be there for him. And the state of Missouri doesn't let people under the age of 21 attend executions because they're considered minors. And I thought, gee, that's funny, because at 18, the U.S. ships people off to war where they kill people themselves. Something's not right here. And that's how you use intellect to process in a healthy way. Because I admit, if I let myself, I'd be really, really bothered by the treatment of trans people. It is difficult. It offends my sense of fairness. And do you see what I did there? I acknowledge the emotion. It offends me. And it angers me. And it upsets me. It makes me very sad. I do feel fear, not for me, but ultimately I do see it as reflecting me, because it's all about what spaces people are able to take up and how much internal locus of control we have over what we're allowed to define for ourselves about ourselves. And I think that's a really precious thing. If anybody tried to say you're not allowed to be Kratos in your head, you have to go back being a weak little woman because you're womaning wrong. You're not that. I get real pissed off. Fuck you. It did massive benefits to my mental health. I am not giving that up. Piss off. And is that an emotional reaction? Sure. Do I stand by that? Yep. Why? Well, because that person doesn't have my best interests at heart. And that's how you know you're using intellect to process and balance your emotions and stop them from becoming overwhelming instead of avoiding them. Because one, you will feel calm instead of displaced. So you will not feel that ringing in your ears. You will not feel the wall, the tightness, you won't feel that anymore. You'll feel okay, I'm good. I'm solid. I'm having fun, but also, like, you will feel better instead of obsessing over this thing. And I think it's interesting when, people on the other side of the trans debate go, you're obsessing, you're obsessed. It's like, no, I'm antagonizing. Yeah, I'm keeping at it because it drives them crazy. But that's not obsessing, that's being a little shit. And it works because they're obsessed. It's wonderful, wonderful projection, and you learn so much by letting people call you names. Because they don't know me. They don't actually know what my motivations are. They're guessing. And that's one thing that healthy intellectualizing allows you to do, is prevent those fallacious assumptions, those wrong way heuristics from entering your thinking. And I may have to talk about that more next week. How to stop those. I might just record it right away so that it's done, because that's been something that intellectualizing stuff has really helped me with. It's actually something I got out of therapy. I refined and improved the process, of course, myself, but the basics came from something called intentional dialogue. But yeah, I think I'll talk about that next time, because we're running long here. So help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or, very important, buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK, and check out the It's Not Therapy bubbles. There are four now that are going to be running. So we're off to the races. Check them out. Thanks for watching, and be well.